The Department of Justice is demanding that a judge immediately order Apple to give it the technical tools needed to get inside the locked iPhone of one of the San Bernardino, California terrorists. Paula Reid is in Washington with more details. So why is the Department of Justice filing this now?
Contessa, there's no legal reason for the Department of Justice to make this filing now. Apple still hasn't even responded to the magistrate judge's order asking them to provide this software to FBI to get into this phone. The reason they're really filing this now is it's all about PR. This decision came out late in the middle of the week. Tim Cook essentially got a whole day where he got to have his statement and sort of his side of things out. And public opinion seems to be siding with Tim Cook and with Apple. So DOJ wanted to file this again, do a big sort of push to get their message, refine their message out there in this whole argument. Here's what they're trying to say. They're trying to argue that they don't want a backdoor that can be used by hackers. They want a front door. They want something that is legally allowed with a warrant. They want Apple to just disable the encryption software so that they can go in and extract this data. They're also arguing that there are public policy reasons that they should do this. There are other cases where they also cannot get key evidence. They're even trying to pull on the heartstrings, arguing that the people who were killed in San Bernardino, they too were Apple customers. So Contessa, this is all about public relations. There's no legal necessity to today's filing.
Okay, we heard from Josh Earnest at the White House that they only want access to this one phone. Why is it the one phone and then the expertise is, no, sets a dangerous precedent?
It's disingenuous for the Department of Justice to say it's just about this phone. There's no law on this. Whatever happens in this case becomes the law. It becomes the precedent. So if they're allowed to force Apple to write this software to allow them to extract data in this case, this is what every sheriff, every police department, every DEA will cite for years to come until Congress creates a law. What happens here creates the law. So to say this is only for one single phone, that's just false.
Okay, and if they're asking Apple says that technology does not already exist. They would have to go in and essentially invent it. So if the government can order Apple to invent the process to spy on terrorists, couldn't they then go in and order someone to create an app to spy on terrorists or a special satellite to spy on terrorists?
The argument that the Department of Justice is making is that Apple knows how to do this. And it's not that they can't do it, it's just that they won't do it. And in pretty strong language in this filing, they argue that Apple won't do it because of its concern for its business model and its public brand marketing strategy. So the Department of Justice says, look, it's not that you can't do this. You probably already have the software. It's just that you won't share it with us. And the danger here, again, is if this court asks or demands that Apple use this software to disable the encryption security protections that Apple has in its phones, the concern is that there will continue to be requests from the U.S. government and from foreign governments to be able to do the same thing. And that does, in essence, damage Apple's brand security and some other people would argue potentially civil liberties. But even if you're going along with a legitimate warrant in the U.S., this is ultimately damaging to Apple's brand, which is all about security.
By the way, we heard a New York City counterterrorism official arguing today on CBS this morning that what is on that phone could basically be essential to preventing attack on, say, New York City. What do investigators really think is on that iPhone?
It's a great question because they're very vague. They say they have reason to believe that there could be communication on this phone between the San Bernardino terror suspects and other individuals. And I do believe that the speaker that you're talking about, the person in New York, said, we're concerned that they could have been talking to people here in New York and there could be attacks. Well, that's all very possible. But we don't actually know what's on the phone. And no one's actually seen the data that wasn't backed up to the cloud. So ultimately, Contessa, there is all sorts of stuff that could be on the phone, but they don't know for sure.
And if they're looking at communications, couldn't they go to the victims' families and ask for the phone records there?
There's a few different types of communication that they've referenced. What you're talking about is, yes, I think sort of as an effort to pull at the heartstrings. They say there was communication between the victims in this terror attack and the terrorists themselves. I think that's sort of part of the PR strategy. I think from a counterterrorism standpoint, though, what they're really concerned about is any associates that they could have communicated with and then intentionally stopped backing up the phone so that here, all of that communication is encrypted and justice officials cannot see it to potentially arrest other individuals they could have, again, potentially, we have no proof, been talking to and potentially coordinating other attacks.
Look, Paula, isn't this a fight that's been brewing for a while?
It is. For several years now, justice officials, top justice officials, even traveled just a couple months ago, to talk with folks out in the tech industry, out in Silicon Valley, to see if they could come up with some ways to work together, particularly because the Islamic State has been so adept at exploiting social media. And you have seen some progress. Just a couple of days ago, Twitter announced that it had disabled over 100,000 accounts that were somehow associated with the Islamic State. But then we see here with Apple, they haven't made as much progress. So this is really the most aggressive that we've seen the Department of Justice go after and attack a tech company that refused to comply with its demands. So it seems when it comes to Apple specifically and the Department of Justice that they have been unable to successfully mediate a way to help law enforcement and help the business. And they're taking it to the courts. And Contessa, this will likely go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Paula Reid in Washington. Paula, thank you for that update.